Hey everybody, welcome back to the Harmonious Path with Jen. As part of Self-Love February, today I want to talk about decluttering as an act of self-love. And there are several areas of our lives that I'm going to talk about that we can declutter. So the first area that most people are going to think about when you hear the word declutter is physical stuff and, tidying and getting rid of things that we no longer need or want. But we can also declutter things like our schedule, our mind, our emotions, and the hardest of all, people in our lives. So I'll start with talking about the standard decluttering of stuff. Now, there's a lot of information out there and so many different methods that there's just so many posts. I don't want to spend too much time just rehashing what's already out there and what you probably already have a fairly decent idea of what you need to do to declutter. So instead, I'll just give an example of how I go about decluttering an area of my house. So I'll use my office as an example. And as you can probably see, and then off to the sides where you can't see, I have a lot of shelves. And that's a lot of space that can gather up piles and piles of stuff that needs to be sorted or thrown away or put away, or just something needs to be done with it. So when you're decluttering, it's usually easiest to start with either a single room, or if that seems too daunting, just one closet or even just one drawer. Just pick one spot to start with. So when I start with my office, I will typically start right here with my desk, and then I work my way around with each shelf. So I'll clear off one item of furniture, and things that don't belong there typically will get dumped on the other side of the room. And by the time I get through to the last shelf, it kind of looks like a bomb went off. It gets a lot worse before it gets better when I'm tidying up and decluttering. But what this allows me to do is to clear off all of my shelves, all of my spaces of things that don't belong there. And if there's something that I'm not quite sure where it belongs or where I'm going to permanently store it, that's what gets dumped. So by the time I get to the end, all the shelves are clear. So I know where I have space to put more items. And it's a lot easier then to tackle that last pile because I can see exactly where I can put the item, or I know that it's something that's just going to go into a box to get donated. So that's one way of decluttering, just kind of a quick example of one room. And if you want me to talk more in depth about how I declutter and how I went from a 2,300 square foot house that was bursting at the seams with stuff to about I think it was probably about a 650 square foot apartment, leave a comment and I'll be happy to make a video just talking about that whole process because it was a whole process. So next, let's move on to decluttering our schedule. And I did talk about this some in my video, making time and creating a schedule that works for you. And I will link that. I'll try to put it up in the cards. I think it'll be up in that corner. Maybe that corner. It'll be up in one of the corners, and I'll also link it below in the description bar or description box. And just kind of a really quick reminder, when you want to declutter your schedule, the first thing you need to do is spend 1 week tracking everything you do. Write down everything you spend time on. If you spend 15 minutes watching llama videos on YouTube, write it down, because I can guarantee you, if you're anything like me, that 15 minutes of YouTube, when it adds up, 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there, by the end of the week, it's a lot of time. And I'm actually going to be doing a challenge soon of 1 month without YouTube, but that's another story for another video. So track your time so that you know where you're spending it. And then at the end of the week, tally it up and look at where are you spending a lot of time and where are areas that you can cut back, or maybe things you can cut out entirely. And then you'll have a lot more free time to do the things that you really want to do. Another thing that goes along with time is accepting social invitations or volunteer opportunities or helping friends with errands, things like that. And if you constantly say yes to all those little extras, you can very easily get completely booked out and overwhelmed and maybe even overbooked. So, this is where it's important to set boundaries around your time and look at how much time are you truly willing and able to spend doing these things. And then set a time limit around that and practice saying no to things that don't fit into your schedule or don't fit into your life or don't bring you fulfillment, easy for me to say, of some sort. So now I'm going to move on to probably the hardest area to declutter, and that is people. Now, I do talk more about this in my setting boundaries video. Again, I will link it in the cards and in the description box below. But when you're looking at the people in your life, sometimes we just need to cut people out for various reasons, and it's never easy to do that. Now, if somebody is clearly abusive or toxic, it's easy to understand why you need to cut them out of your life. But perhaps you have a friendship that you've had a friend for a very long time, and you used to be really, really close, but as time moves on, people change and sometimes drift apart. And maybe you no longer have much of anything in common other than those old memories. Look at relationships like that and determine what value does it bring to you. Do the infrequent interactions that you have with that person still make you happy? Or does it feel like more of a chore, more like something you have to do just because you've been friends for so long? Sometimes people change and it's okay to let go and move on, even though that may be painful. A harder area with people is family. Now, people will put a lot of stock into blood, and for good reason. Your family is the one who's always been there with you since you were born, but that doesn't mean that you have to let your blood relatives or adoptive relatives or, whatever living situation, family situation you have, that doesn't mean that you have to let them walk all over you and damage your mental health. So sometimes you might be able to just reduce contact with a person and let them kind of just fade off into the distance. And that might work for more distant cousins or relatives that you don't see often. But sometimes you have to be clear that you no longer want any contact with a person, and you have to let them know that in no uncertain terms. And that's when it can get really, really hard, because it can also lead to rifts in the wider family unit, as people might be upset that you no longer want to talk to Uncle Bob or, whoever it may be. They think, well, he's your uncle. You should be there and you should see him and you should visit him and all these things. But you need to remember that your mental health, your emotional well-being is what you have to take care of. Anybody else's mental health and emotions is not your responsibility. And sometimes removing people from your lives is very much an act of self-love, a vital act of self-love. And I know it's not easy to do this, but just remember that if you are cutting ties with somebody, be it a friend or family or anybody else, that you're not doing it with malicious intent. You're doing it to protect yourself, to protect your mental well-being, and to show yourself love. So let's move on to something a little lighter. Another area that often gets extremely cluttered is our minds. Now, it's always going. Thoughts are just always spiraling around up there, and it can get crazy, especially late at night when I'm trying to go to bed and I'm laying in bed and it's just going around and around. So what I do these days is, before I lay down, I take out a sticky note and I just make a quick list of everything that's in my head that I need to do, whether it's errands, cleaning, some journaling that I want to do, anything that I'm just thinking I want to do that, I need to get that done. I just write it down on a little scrap of paper, stick it on my planner for the day, and then I'm able to go to bed and fall asleep much more easily without all that stuff running around in my head. And that's one of the reasons I love to-do lists so much, is it lets you get everything out of your head onto paper so that you don't have to think about it anymore. I also love to-do lists because if I don't write something down, it's just never going to get done. But that's neither here nor there. Finally, I want to talk about decluttering your emotions. So there can be a lot going on in our heads, like I said, and some of it is practical things that making a to-do list might help. But some of that might be related to emotions, which can get really jumbled sometimes and hard to sort through. So journaling is a really good way to help sort through your emotions and calm that area of your life. And if you've never journaled before, it's not complicated. You don't have to have fancy notebooks or fountain pens or stickers or all this crazy stuff. You don't have to decorate. Like, you'll see a lot of gorgeous journals on Instagram and Pinterest and all over. All you need is a sheet of paper and something to write with, or a word processor and a keyboard, or the Notes app on your phone. If you just heard a little snuffling in the background, I'm not sure if that picked up, but that's Tiberius getting comfortable for an evening nap here. So back to journaling. I personally prefer pen and paper because just the physical act of writing has a different, it triggers something differently in your mind. It's more tactile and more visceral in a way. But do what works for you. If typing into a word processor is what helps you best with journaling, go for it. Everything I talk about, this video and all videos, always take what works for you, modify it how you need to, and leave the rest, because everybody's different and different things work for different people. So if you're new to journaling and you're not sure what to write, just write what's on your mind. Just do some free writing, or as I like to call it, word vomit. Just write exactly what you're thinking. I'm supposed to be journaling, but I don't know what to write about. I have so much to do. I don't know how I'm going to get it all done. I'm so stressed out. What on earth am I supposed to be writing about? And after 2 or 3 minutes of just kind of word vomiting nonsense onto the page, eventually you're going to start forming more coherent thoughts and more useful thoughts and working through the things that are in your mind and in your emotions. So if that is a little much, you can also look for journaling prompts online. Just Google journaling prompts and you will find lists and lists and lists. And that can be a really great way to start. Sometimes I fall into the trap of avoiding journaling prompts because I look at it and I think, oh, that feels really contrived to just take something off a list and start writing about it. But you can be amazed at what you'll come up with. Sometimes I do this and I can take a prompt like, write about a moment that brought you joy in nature. And as I start writing, I'm thinking, man, this is like, why am I bothering? But as I get further, some really amazing things might come out of how that moment touched me, how it affected me that I hadn't realized before. So just give it a try and stick with it and try different methods, different prompts, and let me know how it works for you. So have you ever approached decluttering any area of your life as an act of self-love? A lot of people might do it just, especially the physical part of cleaning and tidying things, might just do it as a way to keep your house clean. But if you look at it from the eyes of doing it to love yourself and to take care of yourself, it takes on a new meaning and it might have more impact and a more positive spin as you're doing the decluttering. So let me know what your thoughts are and what are your experiences. And until next time, be kind to yourself and those around you and let your light shine for all the world to see. Bye.